sucks. Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast. Marine Corps League and Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. Now streaming on all major podcast platforms. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that has given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're going to have a blast from the past. That's right. Before we get into the episode, or you enjoying the podcast, make sure you go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check it out, see what we're all about. There is some merchandise tab. You can go in there, you can click on it, you can get you like a cool sweatshirt. Maybe you want a hat. I mean, we got t-shirts. Let's see, we got these cool little mugs. We got all kinds of goodies that you can get. Anything you get helps support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Also, a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project. That is one amazing organization. I encourage you all, go to their website, go check them out. If you can help them in any way, it would be greatly appreciated. That's tillvalhallaproject.com.
Major Lee Stuckey. We've been blessed to bring in thousands and thousands of veterans and first responders and save hundreds from suicide. We don't want to be a handout, and we want to be a hand up with our four pillars, which are physical, financial, emotional, and for me, most importantly, spiritual, and give them a good, healthy foundation in a safe, sober environment for a 4-day event.
Are you a Marine veteran? Are you missing that bond you had on active duty? Then I have a place for you. Join the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps Veteran Service Organization, the Marine Corps League. Get that brother and sisterhood back in your life. Become one of the fewer, the prouder, a Marine Corps League member.
All right, without further ado, now we're getting into the podcast. Master Gunnery Sergeant, retired Ramon Villa. Ramon, how you doing today?
How you doing, Andrew? Good to see. Good to be back and talking to you again and reconnecting. And I hope this is just kind of a lifelong connection between you and I, because yeah, I guess you'll find out through the podcast. You and I got a little bit of history together.
Just a little bit. That's right.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
So let's just go ahead and jump into it. Let's start at the beginning. Like, where did you grow up? How was that? And then what drew you to the military and specifically the Marine Corps?
Oh, wow. You want to go that far back, huh?
Yeah, we're going to take it way back.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was actually born and raised in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is about, I would say nowadays it's about 20 minutes just west of El Paso, Texas. But Las Cruces, New Mexico, home of Hatch good Mexican food, Hatch chili and everything like that. So that's kind of where I grew up. So grew up in a little subdivision called Mesa Development, and my dad bought the property when he was a teenager, and went into the Marine Corps later on. But there was we come a long way because he had a 40-foot trailer there after he got back from Vietnam, and mom and dad moved on this property out in the really, now it's not in the middle of nowhere, but back then it was out in the middle of nowhere. And I always we'll get to it later, but when I do some singing out in town and stuff like that acoustically, I always attribute one song called Red Dirt Road, because the first lines of the song are, I was raised off of Route 3, out back where the blacktop ends. Well, literally the route I lived off of was Route 3, and there was one black. There was one back when there was one blacktop, and you had to get off the blacktop to get on the dirt road. And a couple of properties down was my dad's quarter-acre lot with our trailer on it, and that's where lived. Had some horses and some chickens and some cows and pigs over time, but basically was kind of out of the sticks. And as I got older, my dad started building a house with his own two hands, and I still remember my pops laying brick, and the house being built. And, at first, we had the trailer there. And at first, my pops built the first part of the house, which is the living room and and the master bedroom. And he took his Chevy 350, his Chevy C10 with the 350 in it, and drove up that trailer, butted it up right against the house, sealed it off, and we had this house with the trailer on it. And eventually that was moved off, and they finished the house. But I grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I had had a pretty good life there. A lot of had my grandparents, and I actually had 3 sets of great grandparents that I got to that I got to know there as well.
That is awesome.
And it was awesome. And went to school there. Tried a couple of sports, and it just wasn't really the athletic type, but
Right.
I did play some little league every year. Every year I played some little league there. And
Yeah.
so, but I got into music. I was 6th grade, and got a 6th grade, and just junior high school band came to the elementary school, and I heard some trumpet players, and I was like, man, that's what I want to do. So that's kind of where picked up trumpet there, and started playing. So before I get to the Marine Corps part and where I enlisted later on, but I played in high school bands and stuff like that, in middle school and stuff, and I actually got something you probably don't know. I actually, I was probably in 7th and 8th grade. Somebody met me, or I forget how my contact was, but I was like an 8th grader, and I was the trumpet player playing in the Tex-Mex band.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I was doing some Tex-Mex stuff. Played a couple of gigs, and my dad was a juvenile probation officer at the time.
Okay.
So playing Tex-Mex band and having a dad as the chief JPO, it just kind of didn't work out. And he just said, son, this you're not going to be doing this right now. So yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, it just wasn't the thing, the band was, I played a couple of festivals, they're locally in town, and in the parks, and then some in a historic place called Mesilla. There, and just didn't work out. They started trying to gig out and expand the place. So loading up a 7th, 8th grader in a van with a bunch of grown adults playing, playing the bars and stuff like that.
Right.
With what they were doing at the time, some libations. Yeah, I see, with some libations there. And and a peculiar odor in the air. Just wasn't. Yeah, Dad said, yeah, you ain't doing this. So, but when I was a senior in high school, my family picked up, and we moved to Phoenix. Okay. I spent a number of summers, working in New Mexico, and while I was in Phoenix, working with the landscaping and dirt hauling company that my uncles owned, called Nevada's Brothers. It was my uncle Pete and Uncle Ralph. Shout out to Uncle Ralph. He's still around here. Hopefully he listens to the podcast.
Nice.
But those were some summers, some hard working summers that I had, driving tractors and managing and greasing loaders. So basically I was a grease monkey for a while.
Yeah.
That was kind of like my summer job that I was doing. And while I was living in New Mexico, but then when I moved to Phoenix, I would go back down in the summers and work with my uncles, with their dirt hauling company. So,
right.
And would stay with my grandmother and work the summers there. But I moved to Phoenix, went to a high school there in the Phoenix area. We actually lived in Glendale. Which and some of us that are listening, know exactly where that's at in relationship to Phoenix. Basically a suburb back then. It's kind of all grown and collaborated with each other. But when I moved there, it was nothing but a couple of new neighborhoods and a bunch of alfalfa fields. So now we tag into the Marine Corps, and I guess I was a lucky young man. because I didn't know really what I was going to do. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought, maybe I was going to go to college right after high school. And literally,
Right.
I was walking down the hallway, and some recruiter came up to me and said, "Hey, how's it going there?" I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, everybody can see where this is going on.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
like, "You ever think about being a Marine?" And I was like, "Well, who has it?" From there, it was like hook, line, and sinker. He found out
Yeah.
I was in the band, and he just kept working me, working me, working me. I ended up auditioning. As a matter of fact, Master Gunnery Sergeant retired. He's still around. Chris DeBow
No kidding.
auditioned. Yeah, Chris
Wow.
DeBow auditioned me. So the story behind that little peculiar thing was that back then they didn't have what they call, I don't know if they still call them musician technical assistants. I don't know if they
They
still
do.
call them that today, but basically nowadays they have these recruiter, technical assistants, go around and they recruit throughout the nation. Well, back then they had one tour of leadership that went around the nation uh, doing their one-time tour. Well, they had already had that. But because I was the only potential, I would say the only one in 7 years out of the Phoenix area that
Right.
probably had the potential to make it, they flew Chris DeVal directly out to Phoenix to audition me. And he'll remember that because he just got done with the tour and then he had to fly back out to Phoenix to audition me. So, I made it. I made it. Thanks, Chris. He's still out there. Yeah, just Chris, just a Marine's Marine, and still is a Marine's Marine. Yeah, man, I owe a lot to him. But he gave me, just him, my recruiter and him really gave me the opportunity for a lifelong of an enjoyment. And just opportunity. The interesting thing is I actually had a waiver to come in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Now I was denied actually 3 times to come in because I had flat feet. My ankles wouldn't rotate. So put in the medical waiver, denied. Put in the medical waiver again, denied. Finally, the
Right.
recruiter put it in one more time and said, "Hey, this is a third time, last chance." And the Navy medicine said no. Marine Corps came back and said, "Well, he's in a band. He's not going to be doing any kind of prolonged standing. He's probably not going to be doing any marching in any rocky terrain or any kind of gravel and unstable ground. So, he's going to be okay. It's
Right.
fine." So, boom, October 1990, I was off to MCRD San Diego to stand on those yellow footprints. So that's kind of how I got in the Marine Corps. Yeah. Interesting enough is rewind. In '69, my dad was at MCRD San Diego too. So we were both kind of in the
Nice.
same boat. Didn't know what we were going to do.
Mhm.
He joined the Marine Corps, and so did I. Just didn't. The interesting thing is the Marine Corps really gave me, and I think it's with any service. You get young men and young women that just kind of still trying to figure themselves out, and it's just amazing. It's amazing how that drill instructor that that takes you through recruit training in 13 weeks, how much a young person grows up, while
True.
they're there in 13 weeks. And it's just, it's just amazing. But, that's kind of how I got in the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps band, there, and just fell in love with it. It was really a great opportunity. My dad and my family, they were all proud,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And I graduated actually. God, it's amazing how you still remember this. December 28th, 1990
Wow.
is when I walked across that parade deck back
Yeah.
then. And, as a Marine, my dad was very, very
Oh,
proud
yeah.
of it. Yeah. So, yeah. So anyhow, so that's
Well,
kind of
hey,
where I started, how I got in the Marine Corps.
take us to boot camp then. So what were the parts that you remember the most about boot camp?
Wow. Man, it's amazing how you still remember. Still remember my drill instructor names, all 4 of
Mhm.
them. And I remember, boot camp just being, I don't remember a whole lot of a lot of the marching and MC. What I do remember is a lot of time we spent up at Weapons Field Training Battalion up at Camp Pendleton. So,
Right.
if anybody is out there in in podcast world, MCRD San Diego back then, you're like in the middle of the city. That's where you spent, the first part of your time. Then they all pack you up and they move you to Camp Pendleton, where you actually do your Marine warrior things up there. And I remember that. I think the one thing that I do remember in boot camp was, all the weight I lost.
Oh, really?
I was a diet. I was
Okay.
a diet.
Yeah.
I was a diet. I probably would not have been a diet, but I don't know what. This was the silliest thing. I just remember out of nowhere, drill instructor Sergeant Garcia yelling, "Give me all my Porky Pigs up here!" And I don't know what caused me, but I ran to the front. He got my sweatshirt, painted it red, and boom, I'm a diet. So I don't know why I answered to that. It was just the funniest thing, and I do remember. So that was like probably the funniest thing I remember a recruit training. But the one thing that was kind of heartwarming is my senior drill instructor, and we all still say that senior drill instructor,
right.
Sergeant Linneberry was his name. Sergeant Linneberry was his name, and he was a cook. Sergeant Linneberry, final day we graduated in our dress blues, and I walked up to him, of course we're all still recruits back then because there was no crucible,
right.
So it was still sir, so request permission to see him, and and I asked him if everything was right on my dress blues, and he adjusted my white belt and buckle just a little bit, and he just patted me on the shoulder and just gave me this look like, "I'm proud of you, son," and that was kind of neat, to have that, and
right.
but boot camp, it was for me, a lot of people remembered it was so hard. Well, yeah, it was hard, but there was so much going on, so much thrown at you, so much physical stuff thrown at you, so much discipline, so much knowledge, that a lot of it was kind of just the being there was kind of a blur, but the things I took away from recruit training as a recruit were lifelong. And when I went back, to MCRD as one of my tours as a musician, and then later as a drill instructor, the one thing I did remember was the smell, not recruit smell, not recruit smell, but they have this, like, I think it's like a eucalyptus or it's like a California sage. There's just this. I mean, it's like when you go back and you reminisce and you're taken to the sights and the smells and everything. Right. I do remember waking up every morning. You were a hat there too. There was this minty smell in the air, and with the airplane starting to rev up and starting the normal operations of the San Diego International Airport starting to happen during the day.
Right.
But man, I can still smell that. I mean, I live in Virginia Beach now, and I could still, in the back of my mind, just kind of just smell that eucalyptus smell, and yeah. But boot camp was really kind of cool for me, as far as just growing up, and how did my dad say, just becoming a man for me,
right?
That's kind of my experience. I grew up a lot, and and my dad thought, it was great that, when, because I actually signed up when I was 17 years old, and the recruiter came over with the waiver, and my dad talked to me, and he did not want me to enlist unless I was in the band. He had the Vietnam experience,
right?
So it was like, the band was like, oh, son, the band, they're just at a different level. I come to learn that Marine's a Marine is a Marine is a Marine,
right.
But I looked at him and we looked at each other, and he was like, "You're going to join anyhow, whether I sign this or not." And I says, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, hell, I guess I better just sign this right now and just get it over with." So he signed the waiver, and poof, I'm in the DEP program. I'm in the delayed entry program. So yeah,
very.
So that's
good.
where that's how that from yellow footprints to the parade deck, was for me.
Yeah. So with your dad being Vietnam era, did he tell you stories and things of that nature before you joined? Like, how much did he talk about it as you were growing up? And then after you joined and signed up and everything, how much did he talk about it after?
Man, I have so many fond memories of my family, but especially my dad.
Yeah.
So when I was a young boy, and probably as young as I can remember, my dad knew one lullaby, and that
Okay.
was a Marines hymn.
Mm,
He used to sing it to me as a lullaby, or
yeah.
or we'd be driving, and I'd never forget his old 1972 C10 with the 350 engine, and he would just be whistling the hymn,
Yeah.
in the truck, and he was already out in Vietnam, but he never really talked about it until I was in the Corps, and
Mhm.
really didn't, and would just talk a lot about recruit training and his time in recruit training and the things that the Marine Corps did for him, because my dad was very, he wasn't a very, he wasn't, they were not well to do. So
Mhm.
the first time my dad entered in the Marine Corps, my dad grew up in a small trailer. Now, if y'all put it to perspective, remember the old Walt Disney Steamboat Willie, the little round trailer?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
Steamboat Willie, my dad grew up in one of those. That's where he
Okay.
lived for 18 years, and he slept on
Wow.
a couch, and that's all they could afford. So the first time my dad had a bed was the first night he slept in recruit training. The first time that
Didn't.
the first time he couldn't reach the ceiling and touch the ceiling was the squad bay he lived in. And the first suit he owned was his service alphas that he graduated in. So
Huh.
it was a super it was a big thing for him. And he did go to Vietnam. He was with First Marine Division,
Mhm.
Vietnam. He was a supply company.
Okay.
So funny thing is, right there, I don't know if it's still there today, but the band is located there on Camp Margarita. But right
Yeah.
down the road is Supply Battalion. That's a
Mhm.
battalion or not Supply Battalion, but Supply Company, and
Yeah.
that's where that was his thing. But he was, when I got much more seasoned in the Corps and with some rank and stuff like that, got to talking a little bit more sea stories because I had more sea stories to tell as well.
Right.
He would talk about times in his time, talked about Freedom Hill and Dog Patch,
Mhm.
which I'm sure certainly some of your veterans that you're going to have on will be able to probably talk a little bit more about that. But he used to
Right.
talk about just those kind of things being there in his time in Da Nang as well. So that's
Right.
kind of some of the sea stories that he would tell, and it kind of came out more when I had my sea stories from my deployments,
Mhm.
support of Operation Enduring and Iraqi Freedom.
Absolutely.
We're able to kind of connect and share a little bit more, and I was a little bit more open to talk about those things, and he was a little bit
Right.
more willing to talk about his experience. It was needless to say, talking about these things with other vets, kind of like what we're doing here, it was healthy for both of us on both ends.
Oh
So
yeah, and
yeah.
that's one of the cool things about this. Not only that, like you're a perfect example of your dad. He didn't really talk about a whole lot, right? He made probably told funny stories, things like that, but he didn't really get into any details about stuff until you became a Marine and you went through some of the things that he went through, and then all of a sudden there's those stories. And with the podcast, what I'm trying to do really is open up hopefully open up some communication between the veteran and their families, and because there's going to be stories that I bet you're going to tell today that your family had no idea or hasn't heard or whatever, or things that are going to come up, and that's kind of one of the reasons. And I want to be able to capture it on video or capture it for future, that way you and your family have it as well.
Yeah, it's really good. Honestly, I shared this with one of the last podcasts that we shared with being married in the military. We're there, but
Right.
just how special this thing you got going on, with what you're doing here, and how it allows veterans to just talk about things, and to connect with other veterans and talk about things too. Nobody has to get into some nitty gritty details or anything like that, but
Right.
just kind of little by little opening that ribbon in that box a little bit. So I personally think it's really comforting, but also exciting that you've established this forum to offer that opportunity to other veterans that are out there too.
Well, so far so good. I've been having a good
Yeah.
time. So,
You're doing amazing.
Oh, thanks. All right. So you finished boot camp and then you go to MCT, I'm assuming, right? A couple weeks there.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Went to MCT, Camp Pendleton, Santa Onofre there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about a 4-week thing. And that was pretty, by that time, coming out of boot camp, I consider myself, pretty much in shape, and able to handle, the 15, 20 milers, 7 milers and the field exercises and stuff like that.
Right.
That was kind of, it was good for me. It was motivating, getting
Mm-hmm.
down and, getting re-engaged, because back when in recruit training back then, we actually got to shoot a lot of the weapons, and then going back
Right.
into MCT, there was like a re-engagement of that, and to get a little bit more into some fire team tactics and some
Right.
other things of that sort. I made some great connections, with some people there. We they don't even exist. I don't think they even exist anymore. But back in those days, our squad bays were those old school Quonset huts.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what there was a movie that was filmed there. Heartbreak Ridge was filmed.
Yeah,
in those
well, actually,
huts.
interesting. Well, I think Heartbreak Ridge was actually in one of the most northern camps of Camp Pendleton. It wasn't necessarily on San Onofre, but in the most northern camp, above where 5th Marines is located. There's
Really?
a camp up there. I forget what the name is called, but those but we did stay in the Quonset huts. It's just amazing how many new Marines you can and their sea bags and their clothing bags that you can stuff in that place. But heck, graduation day from MCRD, we all got up into Alphas and they loaded us up into buses and back to San Diego International, and then I was off to at the time, Naval Amphibious Base, Little Creek. Now it's what is it? Naval Amphibious Base, or it's Joint Expeditionary.
There you go.
Yeah, the acronym is
JEB.
Yeah, exactly. And there was my. Then I started the MOS training, School of Music as a trumpet player there. So that's where that. But
that 6-month course as well.
It was still a 6-month basic course, and it was really the first time as a musician, period, that I had any kind of, like, other than school band. It was the first time I had any kind of formalized musical training.
Wow.
I came with a family with very little means, so any private lessons that I would take were pretty much freebies, or I would just, I came from a family. If you wanted something, you worked hard enough to get it. So it was just a matter of practice.
Right.
But to go to the School of Music and to learn the theory, to learn to sit and with a private instructor was really helpful. One of the biggest influences, not necessarily the School of Music, but when I was a younger lad, was a piano accompanist that I had. Her name was Jerry Brink. And she was a piano player in church, and I played in church. And as you know, a lot of musicians, where do we get started? We get started playing in church. So I played in church. Jerry gave me some. Jerry, kind of my musical mom, she gave me a lot of music theory, and then I took some of that to school, but I really got a lot of formalized training out of the School of Music theory. A lot of people would know him that are on this podcast that listen. Petty officer at the time, Doug Forziati.
Okay.
Doug Forziati. Doug Forziati was there. Matt Farquhar was still was in the advanced courses, I believe, but then later became staff. Andy Amdahl was at the OIC at the time, and Master Sergeant Finlater was the staff and OIC at the time. Yeah, you've heard of the name. Yeah, Master Sergeant Finlater was a staff NCOIC at the time. So that was kind of the regime back there. Once I graduated School of Music, it was off to Quantico, Virginia.
Quantico.
That was my
Okay.
first tour. Yeah, Quantico was my first tour. So I
Oh,
spent
wow.
a couple of years. Yeah, I spent a couple of years there, and then went off to, and that was a really good experience. There was a lot of weekends, and I got a lot of training there. Not only as I would say there was a lot of gigging and a lot of things, a lot of working there. But that February, when there's that lull in the commitment season, the whole band went to the rifle range and the whole band went to do their field training. So I got a lot of field training, experience doing that kind of stuff. But we incorporated that with the rifle range and stuff, and spent 2 years there, and it was off to Okinawa once that happened.
Okay.
I got 2 tours. Go ahead.
Sorry. Who were some of the individuals kind of that you remember there that kind of maybe that impacted your career while you were at Quantico there?
There was some, it was being a Lance Corporal,
Yeah.
I tell this, to a lot of new Marines, when you go to your first duty station, as a Lance Corporal, as an E3, it's not all peaches and cream, and definitely it was not peaches and cream for me. God, man, some of the names, when the leadership I was there was Chief Warrant Officer Brandon Richardson, Master Gunnery Sergeant Sunt was there, and then oh boy, I'm gonna bring back a name. Master Sergeant Stephen Pooter was there as well.
No kidding.
Stephen Pooter was the drum major at the time, and these were all kind of Vietnam vet guys, and even Stephen Pooter, I believe he was in a combat arms kind of MOS and a kind of job specialty, and then moved into the band field is the story that I was told. That was kind of the leadership. My section leader at the time was a man by the name of Staff Sergeant Louis Arcee.
Louis Arcee.
Louis Arcee, Master Gunnery Sergeant, retired. Louis Arcee. Yeah. Master Gunnery Sergeant Louis Arcee. But it was kind of a good experience. It was a lot of playing, and it was a lot of Marine Corps ceremonial kind of stuff. We were one of the last units in the Marine Corps that still had duty buglers 365 going to the flagpole in plain colors. Yeah, with Officer of the Day at Lejeune Hall. And I was one of those, it was rain, sleet, or snow. Didn't matter the weather. You were out there playing colors. I think after a while they said if it was 32 degrees or below, then the OOD could go out by himself and just do the whistle. But if it was 40 degrees and raining, you was there. Out there more. It was morning. It was a duty. It was the duty. It was duty back in the day. Yeah. So that was kind of, I thought I was going to be like, everybody said you're going to be subbing for the president's zone, and when the president's zone can't do a commitment, they're going to call Quantico, and I don't know if that's how it is now. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe it was at one time, but during that time, it really wasn't. I mean, it was a lot of small town. It was a lot of small town parades, concerts in the park, but it was the days of starched camis and spit shine boots and formations every morning with someone looking at you, and before you went out doing a commitment, that drum major would step inside the band formation and inspect your uniform. So you talk about the lost art, that's kind of the spit shine boots and the brass. I mean, I was so excited when I discovered anodized brass. Are you kidding me?
I know, right?
Windex will do the job.
Or when core frames come about, right? You didn't have to.
Well, when I graduated boot camp, that's the first thing I did is I walked my butt from that parade deck. I gathered my family and we went straight to the PX and I bought a set of core frame boots. That's the first thing the first thing I did was I took off my military glasses and I put on my civilian glasses, And then
Yeah,
I
yeah,
walked down to then I walked down to PX and bought some cork fans.
very
Yep.
nice. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was a good tour. It was a good musical experience. It was a good it was I honestly really I always had my desire to go to the Fleet Marine Force. But
Yeah,
I'm glad I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because it did give me some garrison experience,
right.
and it was kind of it was an eye opener for me as well.
Hmm.
Just that experience. Having a garrison experience vice the when I went to First Marine Division much later on.
Yeah,
It was a little bit different. Yeah.
very cool. All right, so you went from Quantico to Okie, 3-man band there. So
Yeah.
how was that transition for you? I mean, that's definitely a different environment from where you grew up. Very dry desert to now you're in the jungle, very humid, those types of things. How did that all work out
Yeah.
for
So here we are, Camp Pendle. So here we are, Okinawa to, or as you were, Quantico to Okinawa. The interesting thing is, um, as you know,
you?
and those of us listening know from previous podcasts, my wife is a Marine as well. The interesting thing
Yeah.
is that she had gotten orders to Okinawa. Then I put in a package to go meet her. So
Okay.
then I was at Okinawa, and it was kind of a dream to me, because when I left the School of Music, my number one choice was Okinawa. My number two choice was Quantico. I got my number
Okay.
two choice, but it was really a great experience. It was like a breath of fresh air for me, because I'm in the fleet, or I should say this, I'm in the Fleet Marine. I'm in a Fleet Marine Force unit,
Right.
if I may. And it was still, a situation where it was still the spit shine and the polish and everything, but to go to a building 212 in Okinawa, next to 12 Marines, going to
Yeah.
the band hall was a condemned infirmary
Yeah.
back in the
Yeah. Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
and it was good. And I thought Okinawa was a great tour because we had no one else. We had each other as a unit. So
Yeah.
you'd work all day, and then it was like, okay, let's hit the commissary and bring something back to the band hall, and we'll throw some cows on the grill. We'll barbecue
Yeah.
a little bit, and we'll camaraderie. So that
Well, to
was
put
that
some
was really good.
put that in perspective for everyone, is the band hall was downstairs of the building, right? 2-story building. The band hall portion was downstairs. Then you had upstairs was your living quarters. So when
Yeah,
you say that you were there with everyone and you were there pretty much all day with everyone, you go to the PX, whatever, you come back and you're grilling together. I mean, that was your space, you
yeah,
know?
that was really the space. Now, when I got there, the band had just moved into some new barracks, just like a stone's throw away.
Okay.
So the band was no longer living on the top side. Um,
Okay. Okay.
but they were living. Me, since I had an active duty spouse there, we actually lived out in the economy. But
Mm,
we still spent a lot of time with our units there at the band hall, and I think
yeah.
um, and it was a really good experience. One couple of just I mean it just having it just goes as Marines get along and have a good time with other Marines, no
Uh,
matter what. You can put everything aside, and you're scarlet and gold all the way through. You throw
mhm.
some dogs and some burgers on the grill, and boom, you got a celebration. In
Yeah.
any particular day, and that was kind of cool for us. And then we did a lot of getting on C-130s and flying out to the mainland. But the one
Hmm.
coolest thing that we did is it was during the time of it was the 50th commemorations of the island hopping campaigns. So they
Oh,
loaded us. Yeah. So we got to go to a number of places. We went to, of course, Okinawa. We went
mm,
to Saipan. The band went
nice.
to Iwo.
Hmm.
And just I think we even went to
Okay, Guadalcanal, maybe.
we did Guadalcanal. We
Yeah.
went to Kwajalein. We went to Tarawa.
Okay.
So I mean, it was kind of neat, and to see these World War II veterans come back for the first time and to tell their stories about,
Wow.
this is the spot where I lost X, Y, and Z. I lost my buddy. This is the spot where we had to run up, and this is the spot where this is the pillbox that we took out. So to just kind of listen, to experience that, and to hear these. I mean, the stories that Marines are telling now about OEF and IEF. Just think
Right.
about when I was in. People were telling stories about Vietnam, Korea, and still World War II. World War II. So just to kind of hear those stories was really kind of, I mean, it just you puff up your chest, because you're now as a Marine, you're part of that wonderful legacy. You got your own story too to tell. So yeah. So we did that. We did it, and then we went to we did a tour in Australia too. We spent a few weeks in Perth doing the Perth Royal Show, and that was kind of neat. It was a good trip. And then after that, 2 years, I had a 1 year tour. We had a 1 year tour, and we loved it so much that we asked to stay another year.
Nice.
Would have liked to stay another year, but they sent us they packed us up and they moved us to California. But Okinawa was a really, really great experience. My son is a Marine as well. He's a comm chief right now. And when he started, going, when he started deciding where he should go, he's like, Dad, I want to go to Camp Lejeune because I want to be close to home. I literally told him over the phone, I says, I don't want you close to us. Go away, figure it out, grow up, have a good time. No wife at the time, no kids, no bills.
Yeah.
So he said, where should I go? And I said, Okinawa. He went to Okinawa, and he had he was with he was on the Wasp, and then he went to be with the 31st MEU, and he just had an amazing time, and probably saw more of Okinawa than I ever did. But yeah, and then Lisa and I were off to we're off to the San Diego area after Okinawa.
Okay.
So
and what unit did you end up with? Was it MCRD?
I ended up back at MCRD. She ended up at Camp Pendleton, and it was a good tour, but it's kind of I had my heart set on always trying to get back to First Marine Division, to Blue Diamond, but to send me to MCRD, that was where I wanted to be. And the one thing that I always kind of wanted to do ever since I left recruit training was be a drill instructor. So going back to MCRD San Diego was kind of cool for me. I at least got to hear it and see, and see it from the other side of the trench. You know what I'm saying? So
it's definitely different.
It is. It definitely. You and I chewed that dirt, for our 3 years. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I did my 1995. I got to MCRD San Diego as a musician, and then I went to drill instructor school October of 1998. To the day, 8 years later. To the day, 8 years later, I checked into MCRD San Diego drill instructor school. Like I said, 8 years to the day, I stepped on those yellow footprints. So 8 years before, I'm stepping on yellow footprints as a recruit. 8 years later, I'm stepping on yellow footprints as a drill instructor student.
Wow. Okay, so as a drill instructor student, for those that don't know, it's almost like starting over again, right? You go through that whole process again, and it's a little bit of a culture shock as well, because you haven't done that in a hot minute. And all of a sudden, you're back at it again. People yelling at you, all that type of stuff. But what was that like mentally for you? How was that like as you walked back into that environment?
So when I was in the Marine Corps, everybody would ask me what was, anytime somebody comes across you, so what was drill instructor school like? And you're like, oh, that's the question. What was drill instructor school like? So, and maybe our experiences were different because you had different leadership than I did during the time. Right. But what I can say is, when people would ask me that question when I was still active duty, is I would say that was probably the most professional environment that I've ever been in my time thus far in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
the most professional environment. I mean, I really, I think I thrived in DI school mainly because it's where I always wanted to go. There were times where, man, I remember the first, I mean, you would remember the first time DI school, they're yelling at you and they're throwing all
Right.
these things at you. PFT, height, weight, uniforms, and I mean, they're just jamming stuff and they're building this intensity and this
Hmm.
stress level. I mean, the first weekend I went home, man, I was like, man, babe, I told my wife, I don't, I don't think I can do this. I mean, I was like, dry heave. I mean, I don't think I could even use the bathroom, man. I was just
Yeah.
so stressed. It's like got to memorize this drill manual. And
Yeah.
I was like, just it just your support network and your family. I was like, babe, I'm gonna throw. I mean, I get a job with the sheriff's department. And she looked at me and she says, ever since I married you, this is all I've known that you wanted to be, and
Hmm.
you are not going to quit. And then
Yeah.
I was like, I went, hi, ma'am. And I went back and
So,
finished
so at this point,
those
what
weeks.
rank were you right then? Were you a sergeant still, or
Yeah, I was a sergeant.
okay,
I
you
was a
were a sergeant?
sergeant. I went to DI school as a sergeant. Went to DI school as a sergeant. Um, I was I went to DI school as a sergeant, but I was selected for staff sergeant at the time.
Oh, okay, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had petitioned, I had put in an application to go to DI school as a corporal,
Oh,
as a
wow.
corporal, but it's just, I'm a man of faith.
Hmm.
So it's, I feel that, my ways are not my ways, but, you know, they're, and I never know God's plan. But when I went to DI school when I petitioned to go to DI school, I was denied. When I was accepted into DI school as a sergeant, I got injured at a band PT session,
Yeah.
and I had torn a meniscus, and fortunately, I never had surgery or anything like that. It's never really kind of until now in my older age, you know. But
That was back then.
when I graduated DI school and went into the trenches in the recruit training regiment, it was the heart and soul, or I shouldn't say the heart and soul, but it was the the nucleus of recruit
Mhm.
training, the culminating event of recruit training, and
Right.
everything geared towards core values, honor, courage, commitment. Everything revolved, all the training, everything you did revolved around that. So if you think about this, you know, and I never was on any kind of like religious mission and everything like that, but I believe that if I could influence at least 1% of the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
young men, to help them to live their lives with honor and courage and commitment, I did my job. So if you think about it, as a corporal, no core value. Well, no, there was always core values kind of mingled
Right.
in somehow, but not as kind of in your, not as a culminating event. So
Right.
corporal can't go. Sergeant, I can go. Get hurt, get
Hmm.
delayed, then now I'm in at the meat of core values training. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and at that time there
That
was
was at the
no.
beginning, right? That was at the
It was
beginning
kind of at
of
the. It was
like the.
kind of at the. So you had General Krulak's, you know, uh, implementation of core
Hmm.
values in the Crucible, and then I
Right.
was just right in the middle of core values. All
Got.
this. The Crucible was a culminating event. There was
Yeah.
no MICMAP yet. There was no
Hmm.
MICMAP yet. We're still
There's line
doing.
training time.
We're still doing line training. Yeah, we're still doing
Yeah.
line training. So there was kind of no MICMAP yet. And then and we'll talk more about DI duty, but then when I
Yeah.
left my last, my last Reaper hike that I did with the battalion
Hmm.
was the last time that battalion did the Reaper hike as the core values that they got their Eagle Globe and anchors on top of the hill.
Really?
So you figure, and like I said, I feel like I'm a man of faith, but if you figure No, can't go as a corporal. Yes, you can go as a sergeant, but now you get hurt. So now we're going to put you in here. And then when it ends, you're leaving,
Yeah.
or not when it ends, but, I'm being kind of careful here. But when it kind of like the Eagle Globe and Anchor ceremony is no longer on the hill was my last crucible event to hike on.
Wow.
And then, so it was kind of, DI duty was very, it was very instrumental in my life. And actually, I had a good experience, not only with the drill instructors that I have. A lot of people don't have the same experiences I had, but I feel that during DI duty, even my family, we all became closer because the times that we favored and we took advantage of the times that I was off. I mean, I said this before, a whole if you got a half a day off, it felt like a whole weekend. If you got a day off, it felt like a whole week. And man, if you got 2 days off, that was like it felt like a whole month. So and I've always had a supporting family network, to help guide, and to provide me that encouragement and be supportive of what I was doing, So
Well, I will tell you, in my opinion, I'm a religious guy as well, but when you say that, like, you applied as a corporal, okay, no, you were denied for that. You applied as a sergeant, you get injured, whatever. In my opinion, you look at everything that happens, God puts you where you need to be and at the right times for you, and that's kind of how it worked out with my career. And it sounds like same type of thing with you. Because you were successful in it, and you did everything that you needed to do, and I think God put you where you needed to be at the right time. So
it really wasn't. It really, as much as I wanted to go as a corporal, because if I went as a corporal, I'd get promoted to sergeant. But that wasn't his mission for me. That wasn't his vision for me. So I went as a sergeant and a staff select, and even that wasn't his, because I was already selected as a bandsman. His mission was to place me. I felt to place me in a position where I could train. I mean, it's all making Marines, but being part, and we would all know this, but being part of making that Marine is not only the warrior on the battlefield with those warrior ethos, but the warrior that is outside of the battlefield. The Marines Marines are, in my time and even today, Marines are the modern day knights. Are the modern day knights that in my opinion, that act in that believe in those chivalrous qualities, and that were guided by, that honor, courage, and commitment. And, even in my retired days, everything I do falls back on that, being an honorable human being, being committed to the work that you have in your family, and having the courage to do what is right for the right reasons, even when no one is watching.
That's I got to tell you, in my humble opinion, I think God put you in the perfect place at the perfect time, because it was for me. He and that's when we met, was when you were a drill instructor, I was a recruit. And I think that, and I mean, look, years and years later, we're still talking. I mean, that's a testament right there,
So there are several victories that I feel that I have had, that come from that time that I was a drill instructor. There are several victories. One of them is the camaraderie and the people that I've come in contact with Bravo Company and with First Battalion and class 1-98, that is there, but there is now and I'm not going to take credit for it. I'm not going to take credit for it, but I think my prayers were answered when I have a recruit that was my guide. And I was a third hat at the time, or I was the stress hat, as they call them. The stress drill instructor that came in as a school teacher, came to recruit training with me, served in a band with me.
Yeah.
Later goes back to school teaching, and joins an artillery unit in Colorado. Then later becomes a Navy chaplain.
Nice.
David Paz is his name.
Okay.
And we still communicate with each other. As a matter of fact, David performed the nuptials for my daughter's ceremony. So my recruit is performing the nuptials for my daughters.
Yeah.
So it's that connection that the Marine connection. But then also the other victory I have, to be honest with you, is a recruit I met in recruit training that later served with me at Camp Pendleton as a drum major. Later to take my former position as a senior enlisted advisor at the School of Music, and is now doing this thing. These two Marines, David Paz and you, Andrew, have you're part of this piece of my story, this piece of my world, this piece of my history that have become servant leaders in their lives, and what you're doing here, what David's doing here, is just exceptional. You can keep doing what you're doing, brother.
Awesome.
We love you for it.
Thank you.
We love you for it.
Yeah, I'll forever be grateful to you and to all, everybody in Bravo Company that had something to do with me, my drill instructors, and obviously you, because you got to come over and give me a hard time about being in the band and stuff. And I appreciate that. I did not at the time. I'll be honest, I didn't. But now I appreciate it, and it has been awesome to serve with you, stuff like that. And I just think back. I think that time in the Marine Corps was an incredible time, especially you talk about the honor, courage, and commitment. You talk about, the culminating events and stuff that happened during that time. And I think it was very magical, in a sense, and it worked wonders. It did something fantastic in my life, and I appreciate it.
So, it's interesting that you bring that up. I have no, I have no 7 steps to success. I have no, these are my things to make you a better person. I don't think, maybe I'm not smart enough for that. I always go back, I always go back to what, of course, how I was brought up, but also what the Marine Corps instilled in me. Throughout. I mean, I've been a Marine longer than I was not a Marine.
Right.
So, I reflect, I always go back to that, it's just, I'm struggling for words right here, because you just cannot put words to it, in my opinion, what it is like. I have a daughter that joined the Army after she graduated high school, and she was so grown up and so proud of being part of a Marine family. You're like, she would even go down to the barracks of her Army, when they would muster or when they would have accountability at night for, the students in her school or her unit, she would go down in a Marine Corps PT shirt.
Oh, really?
Marine, I would say, she'd go down in the Marine Corps PT shirt. I don't know what the back said, but it was like, one mind, it was like one mind, one weapon, or something like that.
One mind.
She'd form up with her Army unit, with the Marine Corps shirt, But it's always go back, and even going back to my pops, there was a time in his life where he had, no place to, he had no place to go. He had nowhere to, he needed a lot of, it was a time in his life in his older age that he had nowhere to turn. So he shows up in my front doorstep in San Diego while I was a drill instructor.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So he shows up and we have a conversation. Of course, he and I have a couple of whiskeys together. We kind of, and I'm a drill instructor at the time.
Yeah.
So, time's limited. I'm tired. I'm trying to listen to my dad. I got to get up to work next morning. So, dad understands. I go to bed, I get up and I go to, I go train recruits. Dad ends up going and spends all day on MCRD, San Diego.
Wow.
Wait a minute. Walking around. So I go home that evening and I say, hey, Dad, what'd you do today? Well, I went to the base. He's like, why didn't you, try to get a hold of me, Dad? Or, well, there's no cell phones at the time, so there's no get a hold of you. But he would just say, I just walked around base all day. I was like, well, what did you do? He says, and he just said, I had nowhere to go. I felt I just needed to go home.
Wow.
That's exactly what he said. I just felt like I needed to go home. But that goes back to him. He needed to come back to his roots where he felt that his transition was his transition occurred. And he had to go back to his roots, with that. So, we all have these roots. You and I share the same roots. We're all part of the same family tree. Dan Daly, Smedley Butler,
That's right.
Chuck Krulak, Dave Amos, Sergeant Major, all the sergeants majors that are out there, first sergeants, we all share the same, we all share the newest, recruit receiving their Eagle Ribbon Anchor, this Friday or this Thursday. Nowadays, we all share the same roots, So when I think about it, I always go back to my roots.
Yeah, and that's an amazing thing, and it's a great connection that you have with your dad. And I had with my dad. My dad was a Korean veteran, Marine. And now I will say my dad was not the best of Marines. Probably got demoted just as much as he got promoted. But anyways, it turned out to be a fantastic individual. He ended up being a pastor eventually. I was a pastor's kid, but and having that camaraderie, having that is just one incredible thing. And you just saying that your dad had to go back home to where it began, that's impactful, and it's absolutely incredible.
He had nowhere to go, so he had to go back home. He had to go back home to his roots. Yeah. Of course, during that time, he had a conversation about me with the battalion commander and sergeant major, and I'm like, Dad, are you kidding me? You're talking to Colonel Conway? What are you doing? He was like, oh, yeah, I ran into him. I was walking across some PX where they were getting haircuts, and, he was asking me what I was doing. So we sat there, we talked for a while, and I was like, but, I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
He's walking around. Colonel Conway takes the time to spend a half hour talking to this old, grungy Marine.
Yeah.
And just taking that time to talk to one another. Yeah. So that was kind of cool. We all at one point in time, ate the same dirt.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I got to tell you, this is probably the best place to end the podcast because, oh my God.
Wow, it's been wow already. Wow. How cool is that?
I know it's gone by very, very quickly. But holy cow, man, that whole aspect of everything that you're saying, in my opinion, and I'm sure it is the same in the other services to a certain extent, but for Marines, that's just so impactful. And thank you for sharing that for everybody, especially to me. It is something that I had no clue. I had no idea about it. And it's just, I'm flabbergasted. I'll be honest with you.
It's not bad for a drill instructor that stressed you out in the gear locker, huh?
I know.
Yeah,
that drill instructor, man, what an a-hole. Holy cow. He destroyed my whiskey locker, told me, why, you joined the world's greatest fighting force to be in the band. Are you kidding me? Yeah. And of course that was you. So, and I
it wasn't that bad, Andrew.
I don't know. I think back and it was horrible as I think about it. I mean, if there was a thing that you could do wrong, I'm pretty sure you did it at that point in time. That's how I feel about it right now. No, I'm just kidding. Seriously, I'm just kidding. No, but hey, thank you for what you've done. And I think what we'll end right here. And then we'll do the next podcast and have a part two and just enjoy whatever else you have to say. Do you have anything you want to say before we close this one out?
No, sir. Let's continue the conversation. Everybody that's out there that's watching this, listening to this in, we all chew the same. We've all chewed the same dirt. We all have that servant leader quality inside of us to serve, no matter what service you're in. Get out and tell your story. Get out and talk about it. Reach out to Andrew and join his podcast and tell your story out there. Thanks for having me back on, Andrew. I appreciate it. I always say what you're doing here is awesome. Give veterans a voice. And those of you that are listening, reach out to Andrew. Get on here, tell your story. It's a very chill, welcoming environment here, and easy to talk to. And I think even before this podcast, we sat down for about a half hour and just chewed the fat a little bit too. So it was all good. So I'm glad to be back on. Yeah. So after I got done with the successful tour on the drill field,
which not everybody can do, by the way.
Yeah, it's an accomplishment. Went back to school of music for the advanced training. Back then, I had the ceremonial conductor and drum major course, and then then they asked me to do. They offered me the opportunity to do back to back, so I did that, and then I went straight into the the enlisted band leader course, and then from there, after graduating the enlisted band leader course, then I went back to California to Miramar as an enlisted conductor there. So, I had done like the last podcast, I had done a tour at Quantico at a garrison command. Then I went to an expeditionary unit, 3MF band. And then now I am at a wing. So, I'm kind of moving around, getting some
You're hitting them all.
Flavors.
Everything.
Yeah, I'm getting the flavors of everything, So it was, again, a good experience. And I went over there as the enlisted conductor for the band. Some of them might equate this to being kind of like the assistant conductor. But it was a good tour. That was sometime after 9/11. 9/11 actually happened when I was on the drill field. And then, it actually happened when I was on the drill field, and it was before the stop loss had occurred. Okay. So I left the drill field, went to school for about a year, more than a year, and then to Miramar. Then some ramping ups started to happen there. About 6 to 8 weeks, I believe, after I checked into the School of Music. The band's on a plane. The band's on the plane in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. And we did our tour there in Kuwait. We did our tour there in Kuwait during that time, and then we spent about 4 to 6 months there, and then we came back home. After that.
What exactly, while you were there, what were you doing?
Well, it was kind of an interesting move being over there. So what they ended up doing is when they had sent an advance party there of a few band leadership to kind of establish. They always do that. You send an advance party, kind of establish, getting ready for the transition, or the when you're bringing in or when the unit's coming in. So they were still building the camp at that time with structures and sandbags and all that stuff. So if you want to paint the picture, we were actually on Al Jaber Air Base in Kuwait. Half of the base on the other side of the berm was the Air Force. Everything beautifully established.
Yeah.
On the other side of this berm, which is a small little hill, separating the two of this berm, was the Marine side, which was canvas tents, gravel roads. I don't even rows of porta-johns, and I don't think even when I got there, there were what we call comfort trailers, which were shower facilities. We had to kind of hike our way to the Air Force side to to take a shower, but everything
Right.
was porta johns. Later on, they brought comfort chairs in. But what ended up happening there is half the band, or I should say, the junior enlisted sergeant and below of the band, they went to go augment the Air Force security force for the base.
Okay.
So they were out there doing kind of base ops and running security on the base in their Humvees. The staff NCOs were left in on the other side, the Marine, what I would call the undeveloped side, the Marine side, the undeveloped side. We were left over there and to do support. In particular, there were 3 of us that had some specific roles, and that was a gentleman by the name of Raul Caldera, who at the time was a staff sergeant. Raul Caldera, he was assigned as the camp commandant, which was kind of like, camp commandant being kind of the facilities, the manager of the camp on behalf of the commanding officer. And then a Marine staff NCO by the name of Sean Stewart, who was responsible for overseeing equipment, third country nationals, supplies coming in and outside for the Marine side of the house on Al Jabber. Now, at the time, Staff Sergeant Villa was actually assigned as what they called the Squadron Gunnery Sergeant. So that's kind of, that was my role at the time, is to be the Squadron Gunnery Sergeant for that. So we did a couple of runs, a few runs, out in town. Nothing in up armored hard Humvees or anything. We always went armed, but in the vehicle was called the Pajero, which was basically an Isuzu SUV. So we would all go there. We go to Ali Al Salam and stuff like that. One thing in particular that I did was, we'd make runs out there with supplies and, and taking communications gear from, one base to another there in Kuwait. But then also what they would send me out to do is they found out that I was a trumpet player. All trumpets are buglers. So they would send me out on to the different operating bases out there to do memorial services. And if any of you, I'm really dating myself, but back then there was an Associated Press photo. If anybody can remember, there was a CH-53 and a bugler, Associated Press photo, bugler, CH-53 and a bugler, and in the distance was the sunset. And, the bugler had gas mask on the side and everything. Well, that was me. An Associated Press photo was taken of me at the time. Right. So yeah, next time I'm on, I'll find the newspaper clipping. I didn't even know it was taken. All of a sudden, I get this letter from I think my uncle, and with this photo, this newspaper clipping, and I'm like, oh look, I'm in the newspaper. What, it said, it said AP News on the bottom of it. I was like, wow, I'm famous. So yeah. So that's what, a couple of things that I did, but everything that a squadron gunny does, for the squadron, that was kind of my role during that. And we came back, all of us came back, thankfully we came back. Let me pause there. Is once that term was done, or once victory was declared, with that movement of Operation Enduring Freedom, the general took his band and we kind of did, troop goodwill concerts, throughout Iraq. So they would load us into helos and we'd go into Iraq. And it was actually kind of cool for us, going into some of the bases and amphitheaters where Saddam would, be addressing, his troops, and, now we're playing America the Beautiful, at these amphitheaters. And it was kind of a cool thing, there as well.
You went to Babylon while you were there?
We actually did.
Yeah, I remember that photo specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually went to the ruins of Babylon. We got to take a little tour of that, and then we did a concert there in the amphitheater of Babylon as well.
really
So
cool.
yeah,
And I know the last podcast you talked about you being a religious individual, and you look at that area and everything that's going on in Babylon and, back during the Bible times, things of that nature. I know for me, when I deployed there, that was very like just to see the individuals, the shepherds and their sheep and things of that nature. Absolutely incredible, and it made the Bible that much more vivid in my memory. So I'm sure playing in Babylon was huge, in your mind, at least when you're looking at that.
Absolutely, but not as much as playing an Easter sunrise service when the sun is coming up, knowing that you were in the same time zone when the crack of dawn and the stone was rolled away as the sun came up. They're playing an Easter sunrise service as the sun is coming up, knowing that you're sitting there probably at the same time, same hour when the stone was rolled. That was really, all of that, the Babylon trip and all those goodwill, things were really, really cool. But that was really, really neat,
That's absolutely
for me to experience. Yeah. It was a good experience. It was a good experience, always when you're doing stuff like that, coming home is no matter, at what level, you're at, being gone that long and coming home is a little bit of a transition for all of us, as you're well aware. Many of us on this podcast are well aware as well.
Yeah.
So, after that tour was done, it was about a year to the day. I walk in after doing a commitment with the band. We get off the bus, and I'm the one with the band. And I walk in, and I see Sean Stewart putting on his belt and holster. And at that moment, I knew, man, not again.
Yeah.
And then we were back again this time we were in Al Asad.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for about 10 months, and we are doing security for the general's compound there on Al Asad. So didn't leave the base. I don't remember leaving that base. There was just way too much, going on that base, as far as security and things coming in, from God knows where things were flying to you, but that was that second tour within that small time frame of my first half at Miramar.
So I get another.
Yeah, I get to Miramar about 6 to 8 weeks later. I'm gone for about 4 to 6 months. Come back for just a little under a year, and then we're back again. We're going back again. Once that was completed, then I did a couple of other things with the band, still as an assistant, conductor. And then I actually, once I got back, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're a former drill instructor." Yes, I was. Can you run the corporal's leadership course for us? I'm like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
I was a course director for the corporal's leadership course for the squadron. As soon as I was done with that, I got an email moving me to Camp Pendleton. Moving me to Camp Pendleton. And about a year later, about 6 months later, about 6 months later, I'm in Fallujah at that time.
No, that was the second time you and I were together was when you came back up to Camp Pendleton, because that's where I was at the point. Just completed a deployment, the same time frame about that you were there on your second deployment was my deployment that I went with.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I remember leaving at the end of our tour. We're leaving. We ended up in Al Asad. For whatever reason, flights or whatever, I don't know. We had some time.
It was a stopping point for you all.
Yeah,
I remember.
And I remember going over to your compound, saying hi to everybody, things like that. That was a very interesting time. You probably don't even remember that. I remember that. very vividly. But yeah,
I have a picture of me. What was his Jones,
yeah, Jones, yeah,
Payton, and Glimka. I have a
yeah,
picture of us in the compound together, standing together. As
no,
I still have a picture of us. Yeah.
yeah. I was still a sergeant at the time. Obviously, I'm a little behind the times with you, but I was a sergeant at the time still. My buddy Vic Ney, who we grew up together and everything, we discussed about him earlier. But yeah,
That's right. Nate was with us. Yeah, Nate was with us.
Yeah,
yeah.
That was interesting. We grew up together. We ended up, in Iraq at the same time, and being able to see each other. And then you were there, like you said, Jones, Lemka, Peyton. That was a very interesting time for me, and again, very influential in my career. And guess who's there? You are.
Well, thanks. That was a long. I went as advanced party, and that was a long tour for me. It was during the holidays, which a lot of us experience that distance from your families during the holidays. Fortunately, we had a good support network back home where spouses became pretty close with one another, and they would send, although we weren't at Christmas at home, we were Christmas in a hooch. We were a Marine Corps birthday in a tent, with the food and stuff. We had a calendar up there, and we tried to do our best, to to make it as best as we could for the situation that we're in. I think some of the neatest things is, believe it or not, is with Vic Ney and some of the other guys sitting on those, because you're in those places sometimes, and it's like, it's 122, 125, out there. So when it gets down to 115, I mean, it's like spring. It's like spring.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I do have a lot of good memories of myself, Vic Ney, and some other people after a long day, on duty, sitting back, of the guard shack, and we had a little smoke pit and reminiscing on the day with a good cigar.
Nothing wrong with that.
So it was not uncommon that, what did you send troops back then? You sent them, during seasons, you sent them Girl Scout cookies. Okay, got it.
Oh,
but you always sent wet wipes, beef jerky, and cigars. That's what you said to
the most important things on a deployment, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yep. Well, me was wet wipes.
Yeah.
Man, wet wipes. Yeah, take care. Yeah, wet wipes, needed them, especially when the water go out, or you're sweating, or you just you get to port you you get to Porta John, and there's nothing left in the little rolling thing. You always got your cargo pockets with wet wipes.
It was fun at that point in time. Yeah, I remember that vividly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there was some. I was the guard chief for the day evolutions. It was myself and like I said again, a very awesome Marine. I don't know if he's still in, Raul Caldera. I don't know if he's Raul's still in.
Not retired yet. He'll be retiring later this year. But yes, he is.
Well, shout out to you, Raul. You made that tour really easy on me, because you were a good assistant guard chief, really, really good assistant guard chief. And, of course, that's where I met his wife, Nina, there as well. She was on that deployment too. Nina Caldera was on that deployment. Yep. Nina was on that deployment. Yeah, I would. Yeah, they were, and they were just friends at the time, at that
Were they
point
both
in time,
in the band at that point?
No, Nina was not in the band. Nina was in another unit, but, and again, I hope Caldera's listening to this, because I'm just going to give a shout out. Caldera, awesome Marine, Nina, awesome Marine, but also what I've seen over the years, awesome Marine spouse supporting your husband through his embassy duty time, now in the band. You've just been a super solid rock. and what I've seen, through you and on social media, just a very, very positive part of Raul's life. And, it was good. It was good. It is good knowing you, and it's good having served with Raul. He was a super, super duper guard chief, made everything very, when I get a little bit excited about things, Raul would be like, all right, hey, Gunny, I got it again. Let me take care of it. Be like, okay, take care of it, Staff Sergeant. And he would handle it in a very good way.
Yeah, I gotta say real quick, I love Caldera. He's a great dude. But I'm not 100% certain that he was always spot on. I like to give him a hard time. So anytime I can give Caldera a hard time, it's a good day.
I always got good experiences. The other one was probably one of my best 240 gun tower Marines was I don't know if she's master gunny now, but Stacy Crowder.
Oh, she will be soon. Yeah.
Yeah, Stacy Master Gunny Select, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I'm telling you, that double dog knew how to handle that gun tower. I'm telling you right now, she was just really, really good staff sergeant, really, really good sergeant back in the day, and I'm just so happy that that she has seen nothing but success in the Marine Corps. So another shout out to you there, Stacy, and thanks for the several invites that you had given me while you were the assistant drum major for the President's Own. I know, extending out that hand and inviting my family and I up there to be part of that experience. So really good.
He really is great people. She's been on the podcast previously when we did fireside chats and stuff like that. But she is fantastic individual. I think I served with her here at the School of Music. That's the first time we ever served together just recently. Yeah. She's a master gunny, and man, just fireball of an individual and absolutely hilarious. It was a great time serving with her.
She's really down. She is really down to earth. She is she's a good soul. But it's like, we're here talking about people that we've come across with, it just kind of, those of us listening could just kind of pair that off with, think about and reminisce about just good people that you served with, also in just kind of probably not the best of circumstances, but you endured something. Yeah. You all endured in something together, and, you share those moments, and you have something to talk about later. The other one that was there with us was then once Staff Sergeant, but now Master Gunnery Sergeant RC deployed with us also during that tour.
Yeah. Who is since retired, just like you. I think he's in the California, if I'm not mistaken, still.
He was working. He was doing some stuff with the VA, wasn't he?
Yeah. Veteran support officer, I think, for a while. I don't know if he's still doing that, but that's an individual I probably should reach out to and see if he's on. But
he is, and here's the thing: is you got guys and gals that we served with that have retired, and like yourself, that have done nothing and know nothing but serving each other, serving fellow service members, serving Marines, you name it. And they're compelled to continue that service after they get out. And, that's just something that, for us, when we cross that parade deck and receive that Eagle Globe and Anchor, it's just kind of, we're wired like that. We're born, we're reborn like that as well.
Really, you did the same thing, because when you retired, you were still working to help the military. You did. I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah, but, they're called at the time. So I retired, and my first job after retirement, I was a family readiness officer, which now they call them deployment readiness.
I'll be honest, I
don't know what they call them now, but I think back then the Marine Corps during that deployment, I think they had a good program where instead of having and nothing to say with volunteers, because they've always been very successful volunteers in various commands stepping up. But in this case, the Marine Corps actually hired, and they still do in some commands, they hired through non-appropriated funds, they hired professionals to manage that program and to organize the volunteers and to offer the services to service members and their families, through deployments or through in my case, helping the younger entry level students kind of become acclimatized to military life, and to help, believe it or not, to help their families become acclimatized to that military life that their child or is experiencing at the time. And then once that program kind of left the command, I went off to be a single Marine program coordinator, which was fun. The thing I liked about that is there was a lot of, and I made it a point during that time, we'll get back to the deployment stuff later, but, during that time I had my program director ask me, what I wanted to do with it. And I says, no, not only do I want to provide, the Marines, off-duty opportunity, these off-duty activities to participate in them, but I wanted to formulate a council together to help them create the program, to lead the program, to serve one another, to bring other people into the program that were eligible with it. So, by the time I kind of got done with my time there, we had a council together, and it was basically, I would sit back and I'd be like, okay, single Marine program president, what do you want to do? Well, we want to go here. We want to go there. Well, I have the money for you. I can organize that for you, get the Marines together. Now plan it. So we started getting Lance Corporals starting to plan and organize events. So when they became corporals and sergeants, they knew I hope that they learned through that experience how to find, when you have an event, how to find the hidden movements to make that event successful. Because you may need to do A, B, and C, but in between A, B, and C, you need ATAC-1, ATAC-2, ATAC-3 to make A happen. So helping them to see those kind of movements. So that's kind of what I did.
And it was very important in my opinion, because those are individuals that necessarily wouldn't possibly get the leadership opportunity, but not necessarily always.
Oh, exactly.
And you're giving them the insight that you had from years and years and years of experience of that one TAC A, one TAC 2, whatever, and being able to address those things with those young individuals and be able to point them in the right direction. That's an incredible Marine Corps.
One of the hugest takeaways I took away from my time with recruit training is knowing the hidden movements, because you could have a training schedule, but but when you have these 6 things on a training schedule to take care of task 1 and 2, there may be 10 hidden movements. Yeah. And that kind of helped me organize commitments and keep good relations in the community with between the band and whatever, commitment we're doing, whether that be on base or in town, it really helped me open my eyes to see that, okay, I may have these 3 things to accomplish, but it takes 27 things in order to make these 3 things happen to be successful. And that's what we would always call the hidden movements, so always find the hidden movements to make those tasks successful. So, but we got back from that tour in Al Asad, went to 1st Marine Division. They wanted to keep me home for about a year, and I asked the command, can you please send me right away, because I just don't want to be home away for another holiday season. And they accommodated that. So about a 6-month later, after I reported into Camp Pendleton, they sent me and a group of, I think there was about 18 Marines, 15 to 18 Marines. They sent us over to augment headquarters company 5th Marines, and we found ourselves in Fallujah. Yeah, we found ourselves in Fallujah.
Okay.
So we were with it. Go ahead.
Sorry. All right, 5th Marines. That's where we're at. Go ahead.
All right. So, like I said, we found ourselves again. Like I said, we were augmented headquarters company, Fifth Marines, and we ended up finding ourselves in Fallujah. So we had uh, that was a much more different deployment than any other ones. I mean, all the other ones were very every deployment was unique in their own way. This one was definitely unique in itself. Is we had a section of Marines in the band that created a convoy security detail for the headquarters. Then we had another one that was a security detail for EOD.
Okay.
A lot of people don't, and the way I have to explain that is, you have your EOD team that's really, for us, the EOD team was focused on, disarming whatever kind of, IED or, threat that was there. But in order for them to focus that, they had a security detail watching, for them, whether that be, others trying to engage or triggerman or anything like that. So there were the band guys protecting, band Marines protecting, or our Marines, I should say, protecting the EOD team that was there.
Right.
So we're getting calls out for 9 lines and stuff like that. And then we had another detachment of Marines at what they called the CMOC, which was Central Military Operations Center. From what I remember, is when it was also a voting location from what I remember in Fallujah. So y'all remember the purple finger? Remember they got the purple finger. The Iraqis to vote. They had the purple finger, and they went into the voting facility. Well, it was our Marines that were our band Marines that were attached to Fifth Marines that were screening these Iraqis to come in and vote at the CMOC. So, and then we had, and the thing is if we remember anything of Fallujah, we had this thing called the pizza slice, which basically it's where two major adjoining roads connected. I don't remember the two names of the roads, but it came in and it created a pizza slice. When you overlooked it, looked like a pizza slice in Fallujah. Right in the heart center of Fallujah was a detachment of our Marines there. And that's where they stayed. I mean, we really didn't. We would visit them, but they really kind of would never come back because that's where they were. Because in order for, you had to have one replace another for one to go back to, the major, what we call the MEC, the major facility out there to get a breather out there. So, what did Ramon do? I was a gunny at the time, so they assigned me as a company gunnery sergeant for that for the headquarters element for Fifth Marines. So that's kind of what I did, and I did my camp commandant duties because that was part of the assignment as well. But everything else, it became a really busy job for me because everything else that went along with being a company gunner sergeant and then a camp commandant was kind of my role during that thing. So visiting Marines, getting them supplies, going out with them, wherever they were going, and then and then also coming back to the major or to the camp and taking care of whatever housing or building or resources that they needed there as well. So
wow. How long were you there for that deployment?
I was about there for 6-7 months. 6-7. Yes. Well, I was there for about 6 or 7 months, and then the other 15 members of the band came, and we kind of did a rotation. So they stayed and did kind of the same things, and then then we went home, and we reestablished what they left off as as being a musical unit for First Marine Division, and that is where and it was when I got back, it was time for the warrant officer when we transitioned. The warrant officer came over, and then the warrant officer came over to Fallujah, and then I went back, and it was for me it was just me and we probably had 25 Marines with,
Mm-hmm.
I had a small command staff, but it was me and 25 Marines, restanding up the band after the other half left and we redeployed back and taking over, missions and stuff like that. I had a really good support network there with the staff NCOs. But we all worked really hard. We established a basic daily routine with hidden movements, to accomplish the movement of the day. We actually did. We had a normal operating, basic daily routine, when we didn't have commitments, and then we started slipping in commitments. And I think we're pretty successful, and just a lot of good Marines. Mike Duguid, Kevin Van, were a couple of great people that supported me. And hey, Rob Marroquin, an old friend of ours.
Yeah, that's right.
Was very a huge support there as well. That was kind of the core command team as I was serving as both staff NCOIC and acting OIC during that time. So they were really huge, but we all worked really hard, to what we would call making it happen. Some people call it, grinding the shot, grinding it up,
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. But yeah, yeah, even during that time, we got tagged with doing Ford's funeral as well. When President Ford passed away. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. That call came out of nowhere. We literally, a lot of people don't know this, but and you would know this. Having the presidents, was it Reagan and Ford? The band actually had what we called the football. Remember the football?
Yeah.
Which was really just a little black briefcase with all the music that the president and his family had selected to play whatever songs that were going to be part of the funeral. So, we had a little, football, and I did Reagan's funeral, so we did a little football. But then, I got that phone call when Ford passed away, and literally, every leave, every liberty, everything was canceled. And we literally, within 24 hours, grabbed the football, our uniforms, and we're on the bus on the way to Port Hueneme to be with the rest of the military detachments for Ford's funeral.
Yeah.
From him coming and going from Port Hueneme. So
right.
Yeah.
I remember for 29 Palms, my first duty station, right? We did rehearsals for that specific thing, and it was all hush hush, and nobody's supposed to know or whatever. But it was a constant thing. Every year we did rehearsals for it because, hey, we knew that a president was going to pass away, and we were going to have to do something for it. And now you didn't get any of those experiences of doing the rehearsals. It was just hey, go and do this, right?
Well, so were you there for Ford's as well?
No, I wasn't there for Ford's. No.
So no, I mean, so just to kind of put into perspective is that as soon as that happens, everybody's gathered together, you pack and you go, and you're really within, you try to gather everybody within 12 back then it was, if I remember, it was like within 12 hours gather everybody, you're on a bus, you're gone. And
right.
we were gone to Port Hueneme, and we were there within the first 24 hours. We got bedded down, and they put us all in these huge warehouses because everybody was stuffed in there. And then we spent 1 or 2 days underneath an Air Force One plane. No, well, it wasn't Air Force One, but it was a plane. And we would practice with the details. And then I think we may have gone over it 3 or 4 times. And and then it was, then it was televised. It was it.
Yeah.
It was it. And then once that was done, and the president went to DC, then then we were, that was it for that. But he had to come back because he was late. Right. He was interned. Yeah, he was interned back in California. So guess what? We're back up at Port Hueneme for that evolution. And one part of the band was at Port Hueneme to receive, and then another part of the band was somewhere to intern. Same thing happened with Reagan's funeral.
Yeah,
because one part of the band was in Port Hueneme to receive, and then I think another portion, which was another portion was at the Reagan Library for the internment.
Now, that was the same band with you?
For Reagan's funeral, I was with the third mob band, and I was actually playing.
One more David.
Yeah, I was playing. Yeah, and I was actually playing trumpet for that one. But for Ford's funeral, I was conducting the band for Ford's funeral.
And that's something I think that a lot of people don't realize is the military bands and what they actually have to do when it comes to, presidents' funerals, things of that nature, and the standby and the almost like no notice whatsoever. Hey, pack your stuff, we got to go, type of thing. And that's one of the big things that the bands do.
You know what? Yeah, in my experience, when I went back, let's rewind back to my school of music. They would always tell us as young Marines, the general is going to call you, and you got to be, at his house for a party in a half hour, or or you're going to get called for a change of command, and you're all going to have to all get together within an hour and be over there. Yeah, honestly, that never happened to me. But what did happen to me was that phone call, for that funeral to pack it up and go. Every other pack it up and go was for deployments, but this one in particular was, this one is in particular was Ford's funeral. It was like literally, I had the football in my office, and literally I grabbed my Valpak.
Mm-hmm.
And which Valpak is, remember the Valpaks, the green suitcase, clothing bag? Yeah. Grab my Valpak, with my uniforms in it and the football, and we're off. And and then of course, you're getting emails with coordinating instructions and stuff like that concerning it. And then of course, before you leave, everybody in the chain of command wants to talk to you. So that was kind of that. Yeah, that was kind of that experience, with that, it was good coming back from that deployment. I mean, because coming back from that deployment was a little difficult. From the Fallujah deployment, all of them were, but that one was more so than any other. But being able to, I was able to, the high op tempo that I had as a company gunny, I kind of had that same high op tempo, being such a small unit with such a high op of commitments. Cause it's like, oh my gosh, the band is back. Let's boom, 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 boom. Let's get them going. Let's get them working. So we still had a high operational tempo. So transitioning back and forth, what I missed was the Marines, the 15 Marines that were still back there. I love the Marines that I was with, here, but I miss the ones that were still back there. Because for a lot of us, all of it wasn't really over until all 50 of us were back together in the same unit. So So, but Reagan's funeral Ford's funeral was pretty something out of really cool, 1st Marine Division. There were a couple of other things that we did at the, towards the end of that tour. Got to be on an episode of Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. That was really neat. Yeah, that was kind of cool. Yeah,
so jealous of all that.
Yeah, I don't know how it came about, but I mean, I was responsible and in charge, but Rob Merriking really handled all the inner logistics of that movement. But there was an episode where Gene Simmons' daughter wanted to join the military, and he came and he sang on stage, and we got to march in, and we played the service hymns with Gene Simmons and Tommy Thayer, and that was a really cool gig. That was really cool.
You're playing like it was nothing. That was an incredible thing, and I remember getting the phone call and like, oh hey, the band's gonna be doing this, and I was like, oh my god, why did I get orders somewhere else? Because you guys were there with freaking, oh my god. And it was amazing. And I remember watching it, and I had it recorded. I've watched it several different times. It was amazing, like you guys getting to play with them.
Yeah, it was really neat. I mean, that kind of um, concert rockin' gig
Mm-hmm.
kind of was at the same level of when I was with the Marine Corps Recruit Depot Band San Diego, and we did a super fest, which was it was a Super Bowl celebration in the Gaslamp Quarter in San Diego. The
Okay.
last time the Super Bowl was in San Diego, big rocking stage. We got up there, we're singing. We had a rock band, and we're
Yeah.
singing up there, and people are rocking away. And so those kind of things, we're kind of on the same level. And there's just the Marine Corps has given, if you allow yourself, the Marine Corps and the military can give you a lot of great opportunities. I mean, there's these lifelong experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
I've had educational opportunities, not only through training, but before I got out, I had my undergraduate degree,
Mm-hmm.
thanks to the Corps, thanks to the military, but yeah, just a lot of blessings, not, and, I'm all talking great peaches and cream and opportunities, but, there were, there were also some difficult times, everything
Yeah.
from, being tired and feet hurting, to those times that, we kind of all experience, after deployments and stuff like that, and,
Absolutely.
things difficult to talk about, kind of spin off of that and, move, well, I'll get to that. Well, I'll get to that later, but once I left, once all this occurred and the band was
Mm-hmm.
put back together and was put back together in Camp Pendleton,
Mm-hmm.
I got an opportunity to go teach at the School of Music. And
Okay.
the Marine Corps said, you know what, 3 deployments in about, I think it was 3 deployments in 2 years, I think maybe, maybe 3 and 3. It's been so long. I wish I could put it back, put the timeline back together, but it's been so long. The Marine Corps decided, well, you're about done. You need
Mm-hmm.
to go. You need to go rest for a while. So I went to go be the conducting instructor at the School of Music, and then later to be where you're getting ready to retire from now, as a
Yeah.
senior enlisted advisor. I'm at the School of Music, and then it was off to civilian life after that.
Yeah. So you did how many years here at the School of Music before you retired?
I showed up in 2000. It was kind of unique. I showed up in 2008 as an instructor, and
Mm-hmm.
and it was 3 to 5 years. I am going back to the West Coast,
Right.
but the Marine Corps ended up not moving me,
Mm-hmm.
but gave me other opportunities in the School of Music. So I started off as an instructor, teaching
As a
conducting.
master, is that right?
I was a gunny at the time.
You were a gunny. Okay.
I was a gunny. And then I picked up Master Sergeant, and I was still
Mm-hmm.
conducting instructor, and I was a division head as well.
Okay.
At that time, there was a Master Gunny retiring.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Farquhar was retiring, and he gave me the opportunity to kind of sit in his seat as a senior enlisted advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after that, I picked up Master Gunnery Sergeant and became the senior enlisted advisor. So, and then in 2013, I retired. So it seems like a long time, but then I had this position, and then this position.
Yeah. And that was all within what, like a 4-year period, 3-year period?
Well, you figure 2008 to 2013.
Okay.
So in 2008, I went as a gunny.
Mm-hmm.
July 2008, I was at the School of Music as a gunny.
Yeah.
December of 2008, I was selected for Master Sergeant and then picked up Master Sergeant.
Okay.
And just the way things happened, and this is another blessing. Just the way things happened, about 18 months later, I was selected for Master Gunnery Sergeant.
Yeah. That
18
pretty,
months.
yeah. And I don't know for all MOSs, but for the Banfield, that seems to be a pretty common thing. So going from gunny to Master Sergeant takes an incredibly a long time. And then Master Sergeant to Master Gunny is a fairly short time, typically speaking.
Yeah, yeah. And then I did my 3 years as a
Mm-hmm.
Master Gunnery Sergeant, and then transitioned out of the Corps.
Yeah,
You know,
and that was as the senior enlisted here at this in Virginia
Yep.
Beach. Yeah, and now,
Yep, I was a senior enlisted advisor.
so as you look back over your career, right, and you think about it, like what were some of the most important lessons learned that you can impart onto that maybe that next generation as they're going through, and what were some of the things that you would like to leave everybody with that?
Oh my Lord. You know, like I said in the last podcast, you know, I don't think I'm smart enough to have a 12-step process to success. But the only thing I can speak to, you know, every veteran out there or everybody out there is some of the life lessons I've learned from some pretty smart people.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is my pops. You know,
yeah.
Remember your roots. Remember where you came from, and always reflect on that. Another one is from a awesome staff sergeant that worked for me, or we worked together. He was actually my junior drill instructor, Michael Mack. He's a sergeant. He retired as a sergeant major. Michael Mack. He would always say, "Senior drill instructor, you just got to treat people how we want to be treated. Ooh, treat people like you want to be treated, man." And that goes a long way, even in today's world, man. Yeah. You know, a lot of times we just look at our fellow Marines or our fellow persons sitting across the table. We just look at each other and say, you know, I'm going to treat you like I want to be treated. Yeah. You know, this may sound cliche, but honor, courage, and commitment. Honor, courage, and commitment. Yeah. So, and then there was, and I said this during the podcast that we did with the marriage thing, is there was some things I always told the Marines when they would check in with me, is I would always say, healthy mind, healthy body, healthy spirit will go a long way. And that all kind of interconnects with your core values. And then there was something I picked up from my scouting experience that I have as a scout leader that I had with not Marine Corps Scout, but as a Boy Scout leader with my kids. And I was leading some adult and youth leadership programs with them. And they had a motto. That was easily transferable to what I would tell Marines checking in. And that was 3 words. That was three words. It was we had it on the back of a t-shirt. It said, be, know, do. What a Marine should be, what a Marine should know, and what a Marine should do. Right. So we would have be, know, do. Be, know, do. And you know what? I think you gave me a picture of like a placard that was at the School of Music with my face on it. And it had my bio, and then on the bottom it had a motto that I had and said, be, know, do. I think you gave me that framed up. That was kind of a cool gift. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And then, you know, for veterans or for others that have had experiences that, you know, I know I'm saying a lot here, but, you know, we have some people. Keep going.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. You know, and you know, at the end of your podcast, you always talk about, you know, if you feel, you know, like you need to talk to somebody, or make that phone call, you know, dial that 1-800 number, that's all important. You know, there were, you know, I don't think I ever, you know, said this to anybody, but I went to go I was invited to a seminar to this pastor his first name is Nigel. He's written a couple of books. But it was one meeting and it was one conversation I had with him. And, you know, he always, and then we're talking about levels, how some of us may not think that our experience was in the military or on deployment or, during combat operations where,
Right.
was it, others are so much, worse off than I am, or, I don't need to talk about it because there's others that need to talk about it. So I'm going to put myself, back, or, should I feel this way because it's not, what the television shows as, being like, really intense,
Mm-hmm.
or was it really what I'm feeling? Is it really real? That I
Mm-hmm.
need to talk about it. So, Nigel, and I asked Nigel that question, and Nigel said simply to me, "Have you ever had a paper cut?" And I says, "Of course." He said, "Does it hurt?" I said, "Yeah, paper cuts hurt." He says, "Yeah."
Wow. That's really, really good. Really
Yeah.
good.
And I was like, it was a huge aha factor that allowed me to come home and maybe talk about some things,
Mm-hmm.
with the one person that probably understands me the most,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't understand, and that was my wife.
Yeah.
What I say, what didn't understand was what was going on. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand what's going on when you talk to me, and some of us may get that. But Nigel helped me really understand, have you ever had a paper cut before? Well, yeah, of course I have. Does it hurt? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I shut up there and I was
really
like,
good
yeah,
thing.
yeah, Nigel, yeah, so it kind of made things a little bit, and everybody has various levels, but it kind of made it a little bit easier,
Mm-hmm.
in some aspects, and I will never try to, and none of us should ever try to equate, or compare, there are experiences, there are paper cuts, no matter how, how big or small they are, but somehow they still hurt. So what you end your podcast with every time, talk to somebody, call somebody. And I think that's important, that in itself is a lost art, talking
Yeah.
to somebody,
Yeah.
not texting, not posting. I'm a social. I get on social media and I do website stuff. But that's the spit shiny boots and the brass polishing. Yeah, sure. The high and tights. That sure. Okay, if you want to call those lost art, in some aspects they are. But for us, in and out, sometimes that lost art is just talking to somebody. So
Yeah. Man, that's
get on the
that's
horn. It used to
incredible.
be like this, but now it's like get on the horn. It
Yeah.
used to be like
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
but now it's
That's
get on
right.
the horn and talk to somebody.
That's right. Yeah.
God bless you all, man.
And you're 100% right. Like that is one of the things that I think we've lost along the way. As you look at how easy it is on social media to get on and you say things, and then I don't know how many times I've gotten on and said something, and then people just attack, and they, everything is so polarized nowadays, and it is a tough go sometimes, and as a veteran, you think one way, and then maybe the majority of your friends that you grew up with or whatever, they think another way, and it does make it difficult. But I will say that you have to be able to spend time and talk to people that understand what you've been through, and that's it's a lot like me and you sitting down right now and having this conversation is that you've gone through some things, I've gone through some things that were very similar, and we can sit down and have a conversation and understand each other. And I think that's important for veterans to understand.
Yeah, and sometimes, I know, we all have one of these, and I
Hmm.
know we have a long list of contacts and a long list of people that we still have. We know it's their phone numbers, and we need to call them,
Hmm.
or we want to reconnect. So, so it's okay to spend 5 minutes of your time and pick up that phone and take 5 minutes and just say, "Hey, I was thinking about you." You
Yeah.
know, I was thinking about you. Some female Marines that I've served with. It's taking that time, and even it's sometimes it's using social media. I get it. They just had a baby. They've been out. We served together. Congratulations, your baby. Hey, Master Gunny, good hearing from you. Thank you. and it's done.
Yeah.
But that, those are, what, it's sometimes, sometimes it's just picking up the phone and calling somebody, kind of like how, how you found yourself in the area.
Yeah.
Actually, I think you sent me a Facebook message, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going? You're back in the area. I told you you'd be back. So, give me your number."
That's
And
right.
then, here we are. So yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, life is. I think life is. Golly, from from Las Cruces, New Mexico to now, I give all the glory to God, and bringing me, and helping me and giving me a family and a spouse that understands and that's supportive of me. They're all gifts, and friends and colleagues and people that I've come across with, and then now, in my transition life, still being able to, to do something to help the force out, and then still play music too. I still do some music on the side as well.
Yeah. And I will tell everybody, it's a great thing. If you can get into music, or you can get into some type of thing that kind of takes you away from the norm, right? That everyday activity or whatever that you have going on. Not necessarily a bad thing, whether that be acting or the comedy, man. There's so many Marines that get out.
Oh, yeah.
Comedy and stuff. And playing musical instruments. That's a fantastic way to kind of help reinvigorate yourself and just make yourself feel more at ease with what's going on around you. But the biggest thing, and you mentioned this earlier, was just talking to people, reaching out and saying something, saying hi to somebody. And that's one of the big things that I always do. It's something incredibly small. Like now, granted, the only thing I do on social media is Facebook. I'm not very good at all the other ones. I just don't understand them. But Facebook, I every day I click on the search button, and then I hit birthdays, right? And every day there's somebody's birthday, and it's just a quick message of, "Hey, happy birthday." And so many times I've sent a message out that just said happy birthday, and a person responds, and then all of a sudden, all kinds of crazy, extraordinary things happen from a simple, just happy birthday. And that's what we have to remember as veterans, is that reaching out and saying something to somebody is maybe their lifeline that keeps them going and keeps them doing what they're supposed to do, as a good citizen as we move forward in life. And it's just, I don't know. That's one of the things
you never know who you're going to come in contact with. You never know what you're going to do for a person. And you never know what kind of influence. I just had a conversation with a business owner today. She owns a restaurant, and she is a veteran. She owns a restaurant in the Hampton Roads area, and she was talking about how she served to somebody, and left a note on the napkin, and it's kind of a concept of a song I'm writing. And we're still working on it here. But how this individual wrote on the note saying that, he walked into that restaurant. But we don't know if it's a veteran or not, but again, you don't know who you're going to come in contact with, but talk to people. But left the message on the note saying that this was supposed to be my last meal. But after talking to you and the meal that I have, I know that I find value. That I have value in this world. So wow. you and I had this conversation, earlier, but just get out and talk to people, find that contact and reach out to that individual, and just say hello after all these years. And I'm just thinking about you. That's all you got to say.
Absolutely. And it goes a long way.
Oh yeah, my wife's really good at that. Just saying, "Hey, I'm just thinking about you," and the conversation lasts about 5 or 10 minutes, and then you move along with your day. It has a lot of value. I think with people as well. So yeah.
Well, I'll be honest. I know you said you're working on a song. I'm going to have you back on the podcast in the near future. You're going to have to sing the song.
I will.
It's an incredible, incredible thing what you're talking about there, and I think it's going to be one of those songs that's just perfect for our veteran community.
I'd like to bring it to this podcast as its first time hearing or first time, hearing it. I'm still working on the concept of putting the story together. It is going to be country music based. It's kind of like what I do. Well, you've played with me before. I kind of, do some country music on the side, So, if I can give a shout out, we're doing, we look at Facebook, Poncho Music 757. I do country music around the area. Yeah, I got to throw in the plug. We're building a website.
That's all good. That's
kind
what
of big
we're
surprise.
here
But
for.
you got to come play with me again. Yeah, you got to come play with me again. We've got a couple of venues and everything like that. But come join me again. But I'd love to come back after it's completed. And for all I care, you can utilize it as an anthem for your podcast. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I will say I've gone out several times now to listen to you play, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a great time. I think you put on a fantastic show. And for any of the veterans out there, I will tell you right now that veterans supporting veterans is a great thing. So go out if you see it. It's Poncho Music. Is that correct? Poncho Music.
It's Poncho Music. So if you just Facebook at Poncho Music 757, you'll see me. There. I have my hat on and everything. But being from Las Cruces, New Mexico, it's for real. And the boots are stuffed and dirty as well. But here's the interesting thing about Poncho. Okay, if I may throw a plug in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that was. It's a funny story. But that was when I was with headquarters company 5th Marines. The first sergeant gave me that call sign. So on the radio, Hey Poncho. So that was my call sign back in the day, and everybody on the camp and the command, Hey Poncho, Hey Poncho, Hey Poncho. So, Vietnam back in the day, that was my dad's call sign. And if anybody knows, it is. Anybody knows out there, you don't give you really don't give yourself a call sign. It's given to you. So years ago, Vietnam, my dad's call sign was Poncho. I'm forward deployed. My call sign is Poncho. Fast forward, good 20 years later, my son is in the military. He's with the 31st MEU. He's in Kuwait. Guess what call sign they give him?
No kidding.
Poncho. So it's kind of like, so it's like, when I was figuring out, okay, what's the stage name?
Yeah.
Poncho.
No questions asked. Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. It just kind of stuck, man. It stuck.
That is an awesome story.
Yeah. So at Poncho Music 757, we're creating a website, that's going to list, various things. And, after this podcast, I'm going to ask my webmaster that's working on it. Maybe she can, put a tab on there with some veteran resources up there. Yeah. And then a link to your webpage and your podcast would be something I would ask to be linked there as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, great ideas. See, we got together, we got to talking, and we collaborated, came up with a great idea.
I'm telling you, that's the way it goes, because I have to rely on everybody else's great ideas because mine are not always great. So I have to rely on you. I appreciate it. Hey, Ramon, man, I owe so much to you, and I appreciate what you've done for the Marine Corps. Appreciate what you've done for the nation. And such a great family man as well. Great example for individuals to look up to. So thank you for what you've done. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Is there anything else you want to leave all the listeners who have been listening this whole time with? What would you leave them with?
Oh my God. Whether you're in the military or you're out, whatever you do, be no do.
That's awesome. Awesome. Okay, awesome. Well, hey, thanks very much. Poncho Music 757, right? Poncho 757, is that right?
Or Poncho Music 757.
Poncho Music 757. Be sure to reach out to him. He needs more gigs. He needs to work more. So make him get out there and work even harder playing his music. He does a fantastic job. I've been out there. I've seen it. I got to play with him a little bit. He entertained me and let me play up there with him. So it's been a fantastic thing. So please reach out. Poncho Music 757.
Come out Thursday night at Anchor Alley's. You can join me. And then on Saturday, Armed Forces Brewing Company in Norfolk. You're more than welcome on stage to join me, my friend.
There you go. And hey, I would love to be there. Hey, everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your support. And I know that you guys are going to do keep moving on and keep pushing for all of the veterans.
But to all you listeners out there, if you're struggling, need some help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you, and the whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies that you serve with, ask them how they're doing, and if they need that helping hand, please give it to them. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Stay motivated. Change your socks.